The Crew Motorfest is a game I've not talked about much on this channel because I haven't played it. I checked it out for about an hour during the review period before release, made one fairly positive video on it, and then it just kinda flew past me. As a big Horizon player, it seemed similar to Horizon, and I was playing a lot of Horizon at the time, so the draw wasn't really there. And on top of that, the game wasn't available on Steam Deck, which is a platform I use a lot, and let's just say I didn't feel great about the whole Crew 1 situation and always online requirement. So I've let Motorfest sit on the sidelines for the last 2-ish years, keeping a distant eye on it to see what big updates were happening, and chatting with viewers about how they liked the game every now and then, but never diving in myself. Until now. I figured, what the heck, let's see what this Motorfest is all about. And man, this game is weird. Let's start as we always do with the handling. When I played the pre-release version, I only had access to a couple cars on a couple routes, but I remembered thinking the handling felt noticeably better than past Crew games. Still, over the past 2 years, most everyone has been telling me I wouldn't like Motorfest's driving. A lot of conversations were not totally negative, but pretty lukewarm. The impression I got was that it was serviceable, but kinda quirky and broken in some areas, especially from a competitive viewpoint. That said though, I'm actually pretty impressed with the handling in Motorfest. It's definitely more arcadey than Horizon, but that's not a criticism. I like everything between arcade and sim as long as it's fun. And even though I do love Horizon's handling, I don't want every game to feel exactly like that. To me, Motorfest almost feels like they took the dials that are adjusted to get from Forza Motorsport to Horizon, and then just kept turning them more towards the arcade side. Cars still behave generally like cars, but are very planted. You have like F1 level grip and brakes, and the cars are really stable over bumps and curbs and whatnot. And I like that. To me, good arcade or simcade handling is just taking real car physics and making it more fun by making the cars better. It does have some quirks though. The steering feels kinda loose and laggy. On a controller, when you snap the joystick back to center, it still takes a few moments for the car to stop turning in. The wheels kinda mosey on back to center, and it makes the steering feel a bit sticky or delayed, not as sharp as I'd want it to be. It's easy to adjust to, and I'd imagine most longtime players barely notice it, if at all, but coming from Horizon or Grid or really any other good controller game, the steering definitely feels slow. It's also noticeable when drifting. I actually do like the drifting here a lot more than most other open world games that have come out recently. You've got a good level of control, you actually have to counter steer, which is more than I can say for some games, and initiations feel pretty stable and predictable. The only weird thing here is transitions. So again, the steering is slow. The cars just feel like they never want to snap, which is fine in road racing because you generally want to be smooth anyway, but in drifting you're often relying on that weight shift to transition the car into another corner. But it doesn't happen fast enough in Motorfest, unless you do a little trick. If you tap the nitrous and the handbrake in the right way at the right time in your transition, the car does actually snap really fast. It feels pretty good, but this is a really weird like arcadey QuickTime mechanic that definitely takes some practice and getting used to. I still mess it up every now and then, but overall, again at the end of the day, as someone who is very picky about handling, especially when it comes to drifting, I'm fairly impressed here. Across the board, I'm impressed. The handling is not perfect, but it's fun, and that's all I really need it to be. But alright, let's talk about the actual racing and career, because this is where things actually got weird to me. So to start, there is no career, which I was really surprised with. The Crew 1 had a decently strong story and main campaign that was kind of a highlight feature of the game. The Crew 2 still, as far as I remember, had some sort of thinly veiled main career, but there just isn't any main progression thread to follow in Motorfest, which for me, as someone who likes at least some loose structure early on, felt well, weird. It was even more sandboxy than Horizon, which I was not expecting. Even Horizon 5 does have a main career and story and progression system with a set end goal. It's pretty thin, but it's a thread to keep pulling on, something a beginner can latch onto while they get comfortable with the game. Motorfest doesn't really have that. It's just, hey, here's the open world, here's a bunch of playlists, do whatever you have access to in whatever way you want. As a beginner that wanted to check out like the the intended experience of the game, I felt a bit lost early on. I wanted to do things the right way, but there isn't really one right way. And I do love setting my own goals. I love sandboxes, but it was just hard to set my own goals when I had no starting point, nothing to jump off of. I guess maybe this will be a theme of the video, but like with the handling, this big sandbox was easy enough to get used to, and a few hours in it really wasn't an issue anymore. But I feel like the new player experience could be a bit of a turnoff, because without something saying, hey, do this first to learn the ropes, those first couple of hours can be a bit overwhelming. And I just can't think of any other game like this where there isn't any form of main career. So in Motorfest, you know, it's not really a bad thing, it's just weird and unexpected. So I started doing these playlists, like the Made in Japan and that Hawaiian tour one, and I've dabbled in a few others, and to give credit where it's due, there is actually a good amount of effort put into these. I expected something like Horizon stories, which are, in broad strokes, very similar, but in Motorfest you have some cool intro cutscenes, a lot more voice acting, better set dressing in the events, and honestly just more interesting events in general, and even custom HUD elements for some playlists, which is a cool touch. These are kind of what I wish Horizon stories were like, just that little bit of extra effort to make them feel unique, make them fun. However, we need to talk about the writing, because oh my god, why does every racing game these days have to have the worst possible dialogue known to man? In the Made in Japan story, they do bring up some fun little factoids about Japanese car culture, but they also call the Evo 10 and Evo X, which is a choice. And you guys have heard of the Wang Gang spirit, right?
That path is perfect to get a taste of the Wang Gang spirit. An absolute...
What did he just say? What did he just say? Did he just say the Wang Gang spirit? And if that wasn't enough, the Liberty Walk playlist also has a character who likes to tune cars, who describes himself as a customizer, which he then shortens to custo, as in custo lover. You know, the terminology all of us use to describe people who love customizing their cars. Custo lovers.
But let's start with this. In Japan, every custo lover knows the name.
Hold on. Wait. Honestly, at least it's funny, but who is writing this dialogue? So the playlists are fun, with some very campy writing. They're better in my opinion than Horizon stories, but that is a fairly low bar to cross anyway. But here's where it gets weird again. You can't use your own cars in the playlists. The first time you go through every single one, you'll be given a preset vehicle to use for every mission. Now you'll also remember that there's no main campaign. This is the content of the game, so throughout your playthrough, you never get to race your own cars. You will be getting upgrades for your cars, every event awards you with some, and you'll be getting new cars, but you can't race them. They only have value in the open world. Your personal garage is basically just a bunch of taxis to take you to these events where you'll always be using someone else's car, and this is wild to me. I had this moment early on during my first stream where I had been driving a stock S2000 in the open world on my way to each playlist, and then I wanted to check out the customization. So I put some parts on my car and then asked my chat, like, okay, so where do I go to race this car? And there was this awkward pause almost where you could just tell everyone was like trying to type out their explanation of the fact that I couldn't. Let me ask this like as a direct question. If I want to do a race in this S2000, how would I do that? Is the only way, would the fastest way to do that be to go beat this playlist and then go do it and then unlock like the plus playlist and then do it in this car? Oh. That kind of bums me out. Okay. Huh. That totally shifts my perspective on the game, of like what I thought the game was. I had been playing for a couple hours at that point under the impression that while the playlists were the main story content, there were still just like normal race layouts all over that I could jump into for a quick custom event. But those don't exist. There are no normal races in the Crew Motorfest. And this realization hit me like a truck. I had been doing the playlists this whole time thinking like, okay, yeah, these are neat enough for some focused mini stories, and then there's a bunch of routes and races I can do on top of these for when I just want to set up my own events, but nope, the playlists are really the only single player racing content in the whole game. There's no main career and there's no normal race layouts to set up quick racing. It's just playlists. Now I've sort of buried the lead on this, so let me address it before you all finish typing your comments. Once you finish a playlist, you can then go back and race that playlist in other cars. That's how you use your own cars in the game. You go through a playlist once using all rental cars, and then can go back in to use your own cars on those same events. Which is neat and all, but I'm still just baffled that there's no such thing as a normal set of tracks or layouts you can just set up quick or custom races at whenever you want. I guess that's an intentional design choice, but it's a weird one that I don't really know if I agree with. Now, I haven't delved into the online much either, but from what I've seen so far, the online is kind of the same way. Like I said towards the beginning of the video, I do keep a distant eye on the game, and I knew that features like the Grand Race existed, these big 32-player events where you switch up vehicles mid-race, but I always thought those were like the special weekly event on top of the normal PvP playlists that are always running. But no, that's it. The Grand Race is the PvP. There isn't a set of normal PvP lobbies on standard routes, which again was such a strange realization to come to. These things that I've come to expect from really any racing game aren't there in Motorfest. And it feels intentional, I guess. It feels like they made these choices to distance themselves from games like Horizon or TDU, but I don't know if that was the right call here. Also, for a final note on the online side, this is just something I've heard and sort of seen, I guess, on the leaderboards or in videos, but the leaderboards still track your times if you're playing multiplayer with friends, which means that you can draft off your friends to get faster times. From what I've heard anyway, a lot of top leaderboard times are set in multiplayer because of this, which I guess makes sense for a game called The Crew, but again, is just another weird and unexpected feature of this game. I've never heard of another racing game where the time trial meta allows for drafting and promotes, at least seemingly to some degree, multiplayer time trial records. But okay, let's talk about car customization, because this was another area where there are just some weird choices Ivory Tower made for this game. So the performance upgrade system is basically like The Crew 2, from what I can tell, which I actually mostly like. It's a very RPG upgrade system, and I love gear grinding in RPGs, so I kinda like it here. It's obviously quite arcadey, but again, that's not a criticism as long as it's fun and done well. And I don't know, maybe I'm in the minority here, or at least taking a certain stance, but I think the upgrade system is cool. I maybe don't agree with performance boosting stats being part of the gear perks, but ultimately, it's all just about chasing that last 1% min-maxing stuff that the average player shouldn't worry about anyway. So yeah, it's a very unique system across the racing game space, but I do think it's neat. I'm a sucker for rare loot, and this kind of scratches that itch. The visual customization is also almost really good. Motorfest has a pretty big roster of cars. There's something like 700 now, and a lot of them get some really proper, unique customization. The wings on the S2000, for example, are not the same wings that every other car gets. Looking at you, Forza. Tons of cars get multiple unique body kits. And even commonly restricted exotics like this Ferrari still get some nice tasteful upgrades. The car models across the board look pretty good too. Motorfest is starting to run into the same issue that Forza has with reused models from older games, but the paint in Motorfest looks pretty dang good, and that kind of hides the issues on the older models. And again, the newer models do look really good. The livery system is also really strong, with per color finishes on decals and the ability to place stickers on the windows of most cars, which is something we've all been wanting in Horizon for ages. There's also a vanity section for more arcadey style mods, crazy underglow patterns and nitrous effects, and even full-on engine audio swaps. This stuff teeters on the edge of how arcadey I like my racing games to be, but is still neat in general, and hey, if I don't want to run it, I don't have to. What I found truly weird about the visual upgrades was the wheel choices. This is apparently a big pain point for the player base because, yeah, what is going on with the wheels in Motorfest? To start, there are no licensed wheels, it's just a roster of like 80-ish custom designs, most of which are from muscle cars. There's like 10 to 15 more tuner-inspired designs, and on top of this, the paint options kinda suck. You have no finish options, you have to have a glossy metallic paint, and you have to select from preset colors. This is such a big letdown for an otherwise really strong visual upgrade system. And for the cherry on top, there's also no ride height adjustment in Motorfest. What? How are you gonna have all these great body kits, a strong livery editor, a bunch of crazy vanity mods, and then still, after 3 games, not let players lower their cars? Maybe it's some physics limitation where they run into collision issues or whatever, but that, paired with the bad wheel options, was such a letdown after getting so excited over the body kit stuff. Alright, now to finally end this saga of weirdness, let's talk about the game's visuals. Motorfest is actually a really pretty game. I play on PC at 1440 on an ultra-wide with max settings, and the overall presentation is super solid. The game is colorful, well-detailed, has generally good lighting, if not a bit dated, but still, overall, at a glance, looks really nice. It's a fun game to look at, but it also forces you to use TAA, which completely stains the visual presentation to me. It adds ghosting and just doesn't look sharp in motion. I really wish I could disable that, and the game is hard locked to 60 FPS. This is absolutely a first world problem, but hey, I have a 240Hz monitor for a reason. I like my frames, and I have a PC capable, I'm sure, of running this game at 120, but it doesn't let me. I'm sure that's an engine limitation. A lot of games tie physics or even animations to frame rate, so it happens, but in a racing game, I love playing at higher frame rates, and I'm bummed I can't do that here. I feel like this game would feel and look so much better if I could just run some proper, sharp anti-aliasing at 120 FPS. And listen, folks, no Hokey Hoshi video would be complete without me complaining about a lack of pedestrians. Why is the world so empty? It's so weird driving through these big modern cities with all these completely barren sidewalks. I will never not be bothered by that. But on that note, dudes, Motorfest has been a really strange experience for me. I've had this mental image of what the game was like in my head for the past couple years, and now that I've actually played it, I realize how wrong that image was. The things I thought I wouldn't like ended up being pretty good, some things I thought were a given were missing, and some design choices are just confusing. I'm happy overall that the game doesn't feel like another Horizon or TDU. It feels like they tried to distance themselves from that, but sometimes it's okay to take things that work from other games and put them in your game too. I really am still having fun with it though. This is kind of the perfect casual game that I don't have to care too much about to fill my time while I wait for the next Horizon. If you do want to see more, I will be streaming it for the foreseeable future over on Twitch, and the VODs will be going up over on my other channel. And folks, let me know how you all feel about Motorfest, and I'll see you in the next video.